From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
The week Lockbit got bitten. Airline must honor chatbot error, according to a court. And are exploding car keys a thing now? Let's face it here. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been selecting from this past week. We're acting as your cicerones, your sommeliers. We're selecting it. We're going to the dusty shelves. We're blowing off these bottles of fine technology news and serving them up to you paired with the finest commentary. And we are ready for that insight, opinion, and expertise from our guest, Thom Langford, the CISO at Velonetic. Thank you so much, Thom, for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much for having you.
Absolutely.
Me, even. My
Yes,
goodness. Thank you for being here too.
we are so excited. We in the pre-show, we've been vibing, we've been having some fun. So I'm Thom, I cannot wait to get some of your takes on this.
Let's go.
Before we do that, got some business to take care of. First up, got to thank our sponsor for today, Conveyor. Get customers the exact answers for their security review in record time. Second thing I need to remind you of, if you are not doing so already, you can watch us on YouTube live. You can go to CISOSeries.com, hit the events drop down, look for that cybersecurity headlines weekend review image, click on it to join us. And when you're there, you can join in with the comments. Get in on the chat. We want to hear your thoughts on the stories. Any questions you have? Are you agreeing? Are you disagreeing with what me and Thom are saying? Constructive feedback, please. But we want to hear from you. Get it going in the chat. We always have a fun time there. Can't wait to see you there. We've got about 20 minutes, though. So let's just jump right into the news. And obviously, the big news of the week, Lockbit gets bitten. Monday's takedown of Lockbit, led by the FBI and the UK's National Crime Agency, along with other partners, has definitely been the story of the week. Key assets were seized, affiliates arrested, and rewards of up to $15 million are being offered for tips about other members. It was discovered that they did not delete stolen data after having been paid, and that they were working on their next-gen version 4.0. So, Thom, this is a triumph, but maybe a minor one when a big name threat actor gets taken down. And without a doubt, Lockbit, one of the most successful and prolific of them all. I'm curious, what are your thoughts about the takedown, and what does it mean, I guess, for the threat actor economy and community, and for the rest of us?
Yeah, obviously overall it's good news, and I'm hoping that it's going to be the start of many things, many takedowns like this. But we do have to recognize that it's primarily a black eye more than anything else. It's a little bit of a flex by the FBI and the NCA, obviously, and it's good that they've done it. But if this was a company that was being taken down by cyber criminals, for instance, if this was, whatever you see on the front page of the news, we would hope that they'd be up and running again in a few days because they've got good backups, because they're resilient, etc. These folks are no different. These folks, they know their stuff. In fact, very often they're better than many of our Fortune 500 companies. So they're going to be up and running again soon. So yeah, just a black eye, but hopefully there's going to be more of these to come, and it makes it less, less attractive, a less attractive lifestyle for these people.
Yeah, it's definitely a supply disruption. Obviously, like people that want to hire cyber criminals, that demand has not gone down. But I think of what we've seen from other groups of, even if this makes the name Lockbit a poison pill for some people, they just don't trust it now or whatever like that. This infrastructure is fairly, and certainly the skill sets are portable to other groups are willing to hire, or other groups are willing to use, what's still available. So yeah, definitely. I like seeing this. I like that we are seeing more disruption of huge organized cyber criminals. Like, let's keep those stories coming. But yeah, I think that context is important to kind of how this fits into the whole ecosystem for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next up here, one of the more interesting stories of the week. Air Canada must honor a refund invented by its chatbot, according to a court order. A passenger who booked a flight last year to attend the funeral of his grandmother asked the airline's chatbot for its bereavement policy, which allows for a discount for quickly booked flights on that occasion. The bot provided information that did not agree with the airline's main bereavement policy page. When Air Canada refused to honor what the bot had promised, the passenger took the case to small claims court. Air Canada's defense was that it should not be liable for the chatbot's misleading information because it is, this is a quote, a separate legal entity that is responsible for its own actions. A tribunal disagreed. Experts said that Air Canada may have succeeded in avoiding liability if its chatbot had warned customers that the information provided may not be accurate. Certainly a unique defense here. Air Canada later stated that the AI powered bot was intended chiefly to assist during periods of peak demand, helping customers do things like confirm flights. But the sticking point for most observers was the notion that it was a separate legal entity responsible for its own actions. Tom, have you encountered this mindset among
I
crews in your
don't
business? We're in the
know.
heyday of Gen AI, right?
I just find this, companies are well within their rights to change their policies and change how they do business and all that sort of thing. But this is really disingenuous. And since when have we stopped apologizing for getting things wrong? Because they obviously got this wrong. The chatbot got it wrong. They changed the policy. They didn't update their own infrastructure. And then to say, "Oh, well, it's not us. It's them, and they're totally, they're their own legal entity." It's really it's quite vile, actually, and it's just the executives in charge here, or the marketing or the PR people, really need to take a long, hard look at themselves, because frankly, all it would take is to say, yes, we'll pay this, we're going to update the bot, we made a mistake, and sorry, sorry about that. It's we've just got to be a little bit more human about these things, I think.
Yeah, did they take lessons from the 23andMe PR team, like
Yeah.
blanking customers for credential stuffing? Like who is signing off on this PR statement? I like what Kevin Farrell says in our chat here. This is like Microsoft claiming that they're not responsible for Clippy interrupting me or writing my essay in Word. Like you put the thing
Yeah,
there.
you put it there. You put it there.
Yeah,
It did what it was designed to do. It drew that statement from what it was given,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And,
It,
and you're
it
presenting this as a trustworthy asset that is probably a pain in the butt to not interact with as a customer.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
and we know AI does hallucinate. There's no doubt about that.
mm,
But if it did hallucinate, then surely all they need to say was, yes, this is okay. It was a problem. We're sorry, but let's just honor this in
yeah,
this instance,
yeah.
because Air Canada just come out of this looking really bad.
Yeah, and they could have saved themselves all sorts of black eyes. Speaking of black eyes, from if they had just been like, "Yeah, our bad. Like, don't worry
Yeah,
about it, dude. I'm sorry about your
absolutely.
grandma."
Yeah, they could
Um,
totally have spun this differently.
all right. Well, our next story here: will ransomware payments be used to aid Ukraine? Interesting, kind of broader geopolitical story here.
Mm.
An agreement between Estonia and the U.S., signed at the Munich Security Conference, appears to be paving the way for seized ransomware payments to be assigned to assist Ukraine in its defense efforts. The signed agreement itself represents $500,000 in funds confiscated from Russia after it was caught attempting to smuggle high precision weapon making tools through Estonia. But for kind of coming from this, the idea is being floated that proceeds from ransomware attacks could be included in the basket of offenses that allow them to garnish the funds and send them to Ukraine. So, Tom, do you think this makes sense, or given the incredibly creative ways that we've seen threat actors, continue to game any system that we put in front of them, does this maybe fall into the category of the road to hell is paved with good intentions?
I mean, it's yeah, potentially. I mean, the thing is, any kind of confiscated funds or whatever, they go somewhere, right? Somebody uses them for something.
Mhm.
If for the time being they go to this, then that's fine. It's a very political um, uh, statement to make, and potentially contentious. But it's certainly viable. However, as you say, it could be gamed to work in a different way. It could be used as a precedent elsewhere. Well, I mean, somebody may well be confiscating funds to fund the Russian army as well. Who
Yeah, well,
knows?
yeah, on the other side, sure.
It goes both ways, right? It depends on your viewpoint here and which side of the border you sit. But I don't see a problem with it off the at first blush, but we we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I know it's a very consultant answer. It depends, but we will have
The
to wait
one
and see.
notable thing that I thought was important in the coverage, this was not in the headline, but the first thing these funds will do is make victims whole if they can identify victims. Because that was my first thought. I was like,
That,
if I paid this ransom, like I kind of would want it, like
yeah,
do you,
I'd rather it not go to missiles,
yeah,
but
or at least right
yeah,
away. Yeah,
but it could free up funds elsewhere, and then, as you say, go to make victims whole, or go to rebuilding, or
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff. So it can go to slightly more humanitarian causes, which is no bad thing at the end of the day. Again, let's be a little bit more human about this and
Yes.
focus on the human element.
Well, and also realize that this is we are kind of blazing a new trail when it comes to all of these cyber aspects from a hot war in a way, at least in the
Yeah.
West, that we haven't really had to deal with yet. So this is one of the like another one of those like marks in the road where you're like, oh, this is new to us. What do we do with this? I think it's very interesting to watch
We're
too.
seeing a lot of the cyber and the actual kinetic side of stuff interspersed in here.
All right, kind of related to that, the next story here: two Israeli aircraft hijacked through spoofing, according to the Jerusalem Post. Two passenger aircrafts. I'm gonna just pluralize that. Two passenger aircraft flying from Thailand to Israel fell victim to cyber hijacking. The two flights were temporarily diverted from their original course when hijackers briefly gained control of the aircraft's communication service. Fortunately, the pilots worked with international air traffic officials to regain control and safely reach their destination, only had a little minor delay. Some aircraft are equipped with two-way multi-mode communication systems, and this enables pilots to switch between communication channels if any anomalies are detected. The incident occurred in airspace controlled by an Iran-backed militant group, Houthis. And if I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sure they're already mad at me anyway. So, Tom, the theme this week seems to be a little Dr. Evil workshop on
Mm.
alternate ways to impact infrastructure. Here we see an aircraft potentially being turned into weapons. It's certainly not a new idea, although with this kind of spoofing, essentially deep faking communications, if you want to use that phrase, I guess, should the world be making more noise about this event? Seems like kind of a big deal.
Well, I think we're seeing, in this case, the Houthis,
Yeah.
which, as I believe, I think it's a confusing spelling, obviously. But the Houthis, I think, unlike any adversary here, they're using technology in ways that we may not even consider, for instance. So the subtle but important distinction here is they did not gain control of the aircraft.
Mhm.
All they did was tell the pilots that actually you should be going in this direction, not that direction, etc. So it is a small but subtle distinction. But as false positives go in that sense, it's not going to be long before something does happen. Control is gained remotely. In fact, didn't we even sort of hear stories about somebody moving a plane sideways through the entertainment system a number of years back,
Oh, yes, yes.
allegedly?
Mhm.
So and we know we can do it with cars. It's not going to be that far off, really. So it's all. This is the very very sort of thin end of the wedge, but yeah, it's if anything, the aircraft safety is pretty paramount and is pretty tough and pretty resilient as well, as we saw in this case. But
Yeah, I mean,
I
that
don't know.
is probably
It's
the positive takeaway, is that, hey, turns out resilience and having
is
redundancy is a
important.
good
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
Who knew? Who knew? But I'd like to think this is a little blip, but I think, like all things, like especially when we talked about AI, for instance, and the attacks happening there, we're going to see more and more of this happening.
Michael Vinding chimes in here in the chat. He says, as a private pilot, this is scary stuff. There are lots of systems that pilots rely on, a lot of them probably very vulnerable.
Mm.
ADS-B, for instance, is open and unencrypted. I really appreciate that, Michael. Kind of from, these are commercial flights, but, a lot of havoc can be done for private flyers, for sure, that maybe, don't have those same systems. So some really good perspective. Appreciate
I
that.
I did learn a few weeks ago you can also do something similar with satellites as well. A lot of the satellite communications, especially the old ones, is unencrypted and can be intercepted. So
So we have all sorts of James Bond plot possibilities for
absolutely.
locations.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
All right. Well, before we move on, now a word from our sponsor for today, Conveyor. Conveyor AI is so good, it can now autofill OneTrust portal questionnaires in one click. Yes, we've been talking about it all week on cybersecurity headlines. Conveyor's security questionnaire automation tool not only boasts industry leading AI accuracy, but now fills in OneTrust portals with a single click. Try a proof of concept with your own data, and it's always free. Learn more at conveyor.com. Mention this podcast for 5 free questionnaire credits when you purchase an enterprise plan. All right, our next story here. FTC finds Avast $16.5 million for allegedly selling user browser data. According to the record, the FTC alleges that Avast Czechia-based cybersecurity software arm used its browser extension and antivirus software to collect, indefinitely store, and allow a partner company to sell users' web browsing histories from 2014 to 2020 without adequate notice and consumer consent. The sale of the web browsing data was led by Avast's American subsidiary JumpShot, which allegedly told customers that data from its more than 100 million online global consumers could allow them to see where your audience is going before and after they visit your site or your competitor sites, and even track those who visit a specific URL. So, Thom, there's always a point in every one of these shows where I feel like I have to look over my metaphorical glasses in a school marmy style. This one is the one that qualifies today. Given the numerous challenges that we have in getting people to adopt proactive cybersecurity practices, use cybersecurity solutions, especially on a consumer front, you think this will do damage to people's trust in those providers when you see something like this?
Well, I mean, if we thought the Air Canada execs were bad, and then we find that actually you can go worse, and the ethics and morals involved in this are just appalling. Somebody in that company, somebody in Avast, actually signed off on saying, let's sell this data that we told that we didn't tell our customers that we were going to gather and store and save indefinitely, but let's sell this data to a third party that can then use it for advertising, make money, and not just one but hundreds of them as well. So it's and also it started in what, 2016, I think, or 2014, I think.
2014, yeah.
2014 ran through to 2020. GDPR came into place as well, so it was in clear breach of those guidelines. Was there not a lawyer in the house who stuck their hand up? And if there was, then somebody, again, it's I weep at the state of the business sometimes when we see people doing this. Although there are plenty of other companies out there that do this quite openly. And then to top it all, 16.5 million. It seems like a lot of money. Great, but Avast were able to not admit liability or not admit guilt here. They said, we're just glad it's over and we can get back on with the business of protecting people. Blah blah blah.
There were some measures that Avast had to agree to stop the practice, which to me seems like admission of guilt. But I'm not the FTC. Listen. I think the FTC a lot of times will take the smallish fine and a change in practice.
Oh, they'll take
before a long court fight. I'm sure.
My finger is not pointing at the FTC on this. Don't get me wrong. The government bodies like this have their hands tied behind their backs at the best of times, and more often corporates have deeper pockets for legal battles, etc. But I find it appalling, frankly, that somebody signed off on this, or a group of people signed on this, and purely profited from people's data. And the thing was, if a product is free, which I believe Avast is, then you are the product, right? But they were serving adverts as part of their product on the desktop. So that's what people were thinking, how they were paying for this was through viewing adverts, not this hidden activity of well, frankly, stealing your data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now the one thing that's not clear, the FTC found that a lot of the data was re-identifiable, right? They were using just like bad anonymization techniques and stuff like that. It's not clear if Avast knew that was going on, or that was
so they were incompetent as well.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a whole other level of competence.
Allegedly.
Yes, allegedly. This is all alleged. Thank you, FTC order, for not allowing us to ascribe guilt to anything. And as Kevin Farrell kind of points out, if you're going to sell my browsing data, I better be getting a cut of the profit. Yeah, come on, Avast, just cut us in on all your shady dealings, and
right.
Yeah, we'd be less mad.
Ugh.
Yeah, it makes your skin crawl.
It makes me feel dirty,
especially for something promising to enhance your privacy, like literally promising to do the thing that they are doing, to stop the thing that they are doing.
That's exactly it as well, right? That's exactly it. It's horrible.
All right, and we're going to finish up with if you've listened to the show, the types of stories that I love. Volt schemer attack exposes flaws in wireless charger. This is just going to stay with the Dr. Evil theme, putting the pinky up here for the OGs. Blowing up key fobs and manipulating a smartphone's voice assistant with a wireless charger is indeed possible, according to researchers at the University of Florida and CERTIC. They have discovered a new set of attacks called Volt Schemer that can inject voice commands to manipulate a smartphone's voice assistant through the magnetic field emitted from an off-the-shelf wireless charger. And they tested some of the popular ones like from Anker and a lot of the other big names. The attack uses electromagnetic interference to manipulate the charger's behavior, and this can heat a device close to a charge to over 536 degrees Fahrenheit. That's I don't know, like a billion degrees Celsius. I don't know how these work over here. Hot. I think hot is definitely the word here, which is high enough to cause the battery of a key fob to explode. So, Thom, researchers say the purpose of the experiment was to highlight security gaps to vendors to remove the risk of a Volt Schemer attack. But as we all know, there are a lot of smart people working for the dark side. I'm curious what's your take on this?
Yeah, so again, on face value, this is pretty bad, and obviously, anybody who finds sort of vulnerabilities, etc., and these sorts of things, we need to get them addressed. I would like to see what the caveats were, what sort of range, what sort of combination of products, how much power was, what was involved on the smartphone to do this, etc. Because we often find with some of this sort of research and security research, it's, oh my God, the world, the sky will fall, but only if these 5 things are lined up, and actually one of them is so incredibly rare, it will happen, only once on a windy Tuesday in Lent, when the wind's blowing from the north. It's one of those things. So it would be good to contextualize this a lot more, because there's a lot of people who tinker with things like the A-Team, and before you know it, they can make a bomb out of a sock and a can of soda pop. But how practical it is, and actually how easy it is to implement on the street is another matter. Nonetheless, hopefully our vendors out there will look at this and see what can be done about it, because actually there's an awful lot of these batteries around. So
and I'm wondering if this might just be a shielding issue, right? Where the one thing that's interesting about this is it doesn't require a compromised phone or the charger that it's on, right? It's like introducing another, they call it an adversarial coil plate, which I just need to say is one of my favorite phrases of all time. I'm sure it's not easy, but
sounds like a threat
it's
actor.
A lot easier than like a lot of the air gap defeating things like we see from Ben Gurion University, where it's like router lights blink Morse code to export like 1 bit a month out.
Exactly,
a completely owned machine. So it definitely interesting. Listen, hey, plug in your phone. If you're really worried, plug in your phone for now.
That's right.
Don't leave your phone around.
Yeah, and don't get an adversarial coil plates. However much they're selling them on Amazon, how much they're cheaper. Don't buy that brand. Buy the other brand.
Yeah, with your Flipper Zero, don't buy your adversarial coil plate, please.
Exactly.
So, Thom, before we get out of here, was there a story that was a thumbs up or an eye roller for you? A lot of beefy topics in the rundown today.
Unfortunately, I would much rather have a thumbs up, and this is great, or this is funny or hilarious, but it's got to be a thumbs down, and it's got to be a vast, because I just find this so gobsmackingly awful and I won't say depressing, but it just smacks so much of money grabbing execs just screwing people over, and I hate it. So it's that one, I'm afraid.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Thom Langford, the CISO at Velonetic. Really appreciate your time. And you can be found on the cyberspace. You have a podcast of your own, right? That people should.
I do.
Out, right?
I do, and I'm not that long from finishing it, actually. So we have the Host Unknown podcast. I always thought it was the height of bad manners to share your own podcast on someone else's podcast, but there you go. Let's just share the love, and I'm sure you've got a few listeners to spare as well.
Exactly.
And you can find me on
checking it out.
Yeah, exactly. And you can find me on LinkedIn and most of the socials as Thom Langford.
Excellent. We'll have links to all of that in our show notes, so be sure you are checking that out. Thanks also to our sponsor, Conveyor. for supporting this show. We really appreciate their support for making this possible. And then also, thank you to our audience today. We couldn't get to every comment up there, but Kevin Farrell, Michael Vinding providing some of the private flying experience, private pilot experience, and kind of that perspective. CCL in the chat there. We were talking about Word 97 at one point. It was a wild ride. I was happy at one point.
Can I just say most of the conversation was about Clippy?
I mean, that's never a bad thing. Let's face it.
I don't know if that says more about Clippy or our audience. I'm not sure.
It definitely my top one anthropomorphic paperclip. I'm just
yes, absolutely my favorite.
All right. And also remember the CISO series, we are looking for some new podcast hosts. We are having open auditions for that. So if you and a partner, a friend, a colleague have some podcasting chops, you have some technical know-how, and you want to be in front of our audience, we are looking for you. Go to CISOseries.com. It is right on our front page. Open auditions. Click on it. Look at the details. Send us a submission. We want to hear from you. And we'll be back next week with another Super Cyber Game Show. Friday, we're playing an hour of games, so be sure to check that out. And another week in review show. So go to CISOseries.com and look at the events page for all of those details. Get registered for those. And remember, you can still get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines every single day. Give us about 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Stroffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOseries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.